Hello everyone, and welcome to the Weekly Horror Report. I'm Robert from Robert Foster Art, and I'm so excited to be uploading my first podcast. In honor of my first podcast, I figured I'd start with a story from my hometown. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the Houghton Mansion, or as the locals like to call it, Masonic Temple. I've always been fascinated with this building, even when I was a kid. My friends and I used to hang out there all the time, sitting on the outdoor staircase and even hiding in the ditch that was behind the mansion. Now, I'm not the only one who has been fascinated by this building. In fact, back in 2008, the popular Ghost Adventures show on Travel Channel did an episode on the mansion in their first season, which you can find clips on YouTube, or if you have Vudu, which is a streaming movie service, you can buy the episode and watch it. In this podcast, I'm going to go over the history of the mansion and the tragedies that occurred. And at the end, I will talk about my own personal experiences, which is why I hope you all stay tuned. Albert Charles Houghton, president of the Arnold Print Works, now known as MassMocha, and first mayor of North Adams, Massachusetts, built what is now the Masonic Temple in the 1890s. Shortly before his term as mayor expired. It was his third home in North Adams, and is the most extravagant, reflecting his wealth and status. Built in a neoclassical revival style, it has strong Greek features along with an eclectic array of influences from many diverse sources. The mansion's roof was made with Spanish tile, and the clapboards were thinner near the bottom to make the house appear taller than it actually was. There was a formal garden in the rear, which was often used for parties to raise money for the North Adams Hospital. The Houghtons moved in circa 1900. The family then consisting of Mr. Houghton, his wife Cordelia, and their youngest surviving daughter, Mary, then 23 years old. Another daughter, Laura, died as an infant, while three others lived to grow up, marry, and produce their own children. In 1905, when Mr. Houghton was 61, his health started to fail. At that point, Mary resolved that she would never wed, but devote her life to taking care of her father. A manic workaholic with a passion for business, Mr. Houghton did not, in fact, retire, but only cut back, dividing his time between the Arnold Print Works sales offices in New York City and North Adams, leaving the major decisions to be decided by his son-in-law, William A. Gallup. In spring 1914, the Houghtons invested in their first car, a 7-passenger Pierce Arrow touring car, and sent their long-term chauffeur, John Witters, also known as John Winters, to learn to drive it. On August 1st of that year, Mr. Houghton and his daughter Mary decided to go to Bennington, Vermont for a pleasure drive. Mrs. Houghton decided to stay home. They were accompanied by Dr. and Mrs. Robert Houghton of New York. Sybil Houghton was a childhood friend of Mary's and daughter of the North Adams shoe manufacturer W.G. Caddy. With Witters at the wheel, the car left the Houghton mansion at 9 a.m. At 9:30, it was in Pownell, Vermont, heading up what is now Oak Hill Road. The road was under repair, and a team of horses was parked on the right side. Witters went around them on the left side at about 12 miles an hour. On the left shoulder, the car tilted and went down a steep embankment, rolling over 3 times before coming to a rest in an upright position in a farmer's field. Everyone except Mary Houghton was thrown out of the car. The men all escaped with minor injuries such as cuts, scrapes, bruises, and minor fractures. The women, however, weren't so lucky. Mrs. Houghton was killed almost instantly when the car rolled over her. Mary Houghton was injured just as badly and died of her injuries at 3 p.m. at the North Adams Hospital. Expecting to survive, Mr. Houghton was taken home. He died 10 days later. The investigator for the state of Vermont exonerated Witters of all wrongdoing, blaming the accident instead on the soft shoulder of the road. But Witters still blamed himself, and at 5 a.m. on August 2, 1914, he shot himself in the cellar of the Houghton barn with a horse pistol. Mr. Houghton died on August 11, 1914. Following the crash, one of two surviving Houghton daughters, Florence, moved into the house with her husband, William A. Gallup, and made the mansion their home, looking after Mrs. Houghton until her death in 1916. They resided in the house until Mr. Gallup retired in 1926. Florence Gallup and her sister, Susan Houghton McKeon, sold the mansion to the Masons in 1926. The Masons did away with the formal garden and constructed their lodge building in its place. In more recent years, for the sake of economy, the Spanish tile roof was removed and replaced with asphalt, and siding has been put over the clapboards. Otherwise, the exterior looks just as it did when it was built. Unable to keep up with the building code, the Lafayette Greylock Freemasons in 2017 sold the house to new owners, who may turn it into a residence or a gallery, which has ended the ghost tours formerly run by Berkshire Paranormal. Now, as I said at the beginning of this episode, I've had my own personal creepy experiences with the mansion, and I'm going to share them right now. As I said earlier, me and my friends would always play around the building and hang out there. On one occasion, when we were hanging out in the ditch that I talked about, at a certain point we heard a distant, creepy voice of a girl saying our names. Now, it obviously wasn't any of us, since we were all in the ditch. It scared us so much that we ran out of there as fast as we could. The next experience was at one of the National Night Out events, which is an outdoor event that used to be hosted there every year in August. They stopped hosting it there a while ago, and they did host one in a different location a few years back, and I'm not sure if it is even a thing anymore. But anyway, I had to go to the bathroom, and the bathrooms were located inside of the building, and it wasn't well lit either, because it was dark outside and they didn't have the lights on. Even though it was dark and creepy, everything was fine until the toilet next to me flushed. Normally I wouldn't care, however, I was the only person in the bathroom, and I'm pretty sure the toilets don't have automatic flushing, since it is a really old building. I ran out of there as fast as I could and was shaking up the rest of the night. This was the night I found out that the building was haunted. My last experience happened either in 2006 or 2007 during a summer program I was part of. We started the day with a tour of the building because a lot of us have always wanted to see the whole building, and at that point, most of us have only seen the first floor. The tour was fine, and the upper floors were less kept up, so they had a creepiness factor to them, but other than that, nothing out of the ordinary. Things didn't start getting creepy until we started the nutrition activity, which is why the group I was a part of was there in the first place. It was a really hot day outside, and the building has no air conditioning, since it is a really old building, but for some reason the room we were in was absolutely freezing. But the activity went as normal and everything was fine. It wasn't until about a week later our teachers printed the pictures that they took, and they noticed a bunch of orbs above us, and one was right next to my head, which they didn't want to show me at first. Those are pretty much the only experiences I can remember, but they did really freak me out at the time. Before I wrap up this episode, I would like to mention one last creepy fact about the mansion. On the property, there is a wall made out of stones that is part of the hill where Prospect Street is. Those stones came from the debris from the construction of the Houghton Tunnel. Many people speculate that what caused all of the tragedy and misfortune were those rocks, since many people were killed while making the Houghton Tunnel. Essentially, the negative energy from the stones cursed the family and led to their downfall. Now, on that note, I would like to thank everybody for tuning in and supporting my podcast journey. If you would like to donate to help keep the podcast running as well as contribute to my art, visit robertfoster.com/tipjar, or you can buy any of my merch at robertfosterart.com, where I also do commissions. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, like my Facebook page. Also, if you have any scary personal stories that you would like to be featured in a future podcast, feel free to email me. All of the links will be in the description, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day. Thank you.